This is a crochet tutorial for the beanie hat. I like this hat very much because it has several elements of texture in it. I use chunky or bulky yarn and I use a 4.5mm crochet hook. Of course, you're free to use other sizes, for example 5mm. You need a secondary hook size. For in my case it would be 5.5mm crochet hook, so just make sure you have one size bigger crochet hook as a secondary hook. This hat will consist of about 8 to 9 rows of half double crochet stitches at the beginning, which is not what I'm going to show you. I'm just going to show you the more challenging parts of the hat. All the crochet terms I'm using in this video tutorial would be in US terms. So after you make about 7, 8, 9, or even 10 rows of half double crochet stitches, you're going to start with the first texture, which is also half double crochet stitches. So you start with the chain 2. But instead of working the stitches normally, you are going to use the third loop of the previous row. The third loop is the third horizontal stitch or horizontal bar of the half double crochet stitch of the previous row. So a half double crochet stitch would be yarn over, insert your hook as normal, but it would be in the third loop, and then you yarn over again, pull through one loop, yarn over for the third time, and then pull through 3 loops on your hook. Okay, so it is similar to an ordinary half double crochet stitch, only you insert your hook on the third loop, or you can say like the second space at the back of the stitch. Okay, so you do this throughout the row, and the reason why we like this stitch is because it gives us a nice texture, which is similar to like a knit stitch. So this is going to be the last half double crochet worked into the third loop, and then we're going to close it off by slip stitching. So you insert your hook at the top of the first HDC of this row, slip stitch through the last stitch as well. The next stitch is going to be a crisscross stitch, and we start off with a chain 3, and this consists of 2 parts. First one is you skip the first stitch, work a double crochet in the next one, and then you go back to the skip space and work a second double crochet stitch. So here's our first one. We just skip the first space, go back to the skip space and work a double crochet stitch. So skip the next space and go on to the following stitch right here and work a double crochet stitch. Go back to the previous skipped space and work a double crochet stitch. So that's what you need to do to make a crisscross stitch. So we're going back to the skipped space. So the previous row must have an even number of stitches for this to work. So you really have to follow the pattern as I have written it. Okay, so you're always skipping first and working double crochet stitches. And then you go back to the skipped space and work your second double crochet stitch for that pair. So you just keep doing this until you finish the row. So we're coming over to the last pair. Skip the stitch, work to the next one, a double crochet stitch, and then you go back to the skipped space and work your second double crochet stitch of that pair. And then we close this row off by slip stitching, inserting your hook into the top of the first stitch of this same row and through the last stitch of the row. So after this row, it is simply a row of simple half double crochet stitch. Simple enough. You chain 2, yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 3 hooks, or rather loops on the hook. Okay, so this is a simple stitch. Just wanted to show you what the next one is. And we'll fast forward through this one, and then we move on to the next texture for this particular pattern. So we're coming over to finish this row. Last 2 half double crochet stitches, and like always we close each row by slip stitching through the top of the first stitch and through the last. Alright, the next texture we're going to talk about would be the front post half double crochet stitch. We start that by chaining 2, and it's similar to an ordinary half double crochet stitch, only that we are working the stitch through the front post of the previous row. So if you watch the video, after you yarn over the first time, you insert your hook through the stitch, and then you weave that same hook forward through the other side. If you take a look at the previous row, you can see them as if they are made of posts. So in you go, and then you twist it, and then poke your hook through the front. And this is why we call it a front post. So we're wrapping your crochet hook through, and we are working each half double crochet stitch this way. That's the beauty of video, is that less wordy explanation. All you have to do is watch the video. Okay, so work this all throughout this row, and for most sizes you will need 2 rows of this particular stitch, a front post half double crochet stitch, and we end both rows similar as the other rows. Slip stitch through the top of the first stitch and the last stitch of the row. To the end of this row, half double crochet through the front post, and then we slip stitch through the top of the first stitch of the row and the last stitch of the row, so slip stitch. Now this is the last row of the hat. We use a bigger size crochet hook, for in my case it is 5.5 millimeter. We chain 1 and then we work single crochet throughout. Now since we're using a bigger hook, you will probably have a teeny tiny difficulty trying to fit that hook through the previous row. The reason why I'm using a bigger hook is because I want a specific texture at the end or at the bottom of the hat. So slightly bigger stitches. So it's a simple stitch, a single crochet stitch. So we end this by looking for the top of the first stitch, and you slip stitch through that and through the last stitch of the row, and then you secure it by chaining 1, cut your yarn, and then you can use your crochet hook to weave in this end. Now some people prefer weaving it with a yarn needle. That's completely up to you, but it's a short enough loose end here that you can just use your crochet hook to do this. So that's it. This is the beanie hat, which I just love the texture of it, and I hope you enjoy making one for yourself and maybe one for your loved ones and friends. Alright, we'll see you in the next video.